He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
Hi and welcome to Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower. My name's James Nikise. I'm with Sarb Johal and we have some questions that I'm going to be throwing to him and hopefully he can give me some answers. Sarb, I want to talk to you about imposter syndrome. You know, when you've achieved something, but then you feel like you don't deserve it, which to me seems intrinsically Kiwi.
I hear you. I hear that a lot. So this is the idea that perhaps we think we've only succeeded due to luck and not because of our talent or qualifications. And this is first sort of thought about as applying to just women in the original research, but actually it's very clear that it occurs for both men and women, and it's very common.
I mean, that's the first time I've ever heard that it actually started off with women. I've always just felt whenever I've achieved something, and I'm sure some of the listeners to this program have too, it's purely by chance, or at least someone I know.
And often it's about not being able to kind of take on board and internalize your own success. You kind of like say, oh, well, it was due to luck or circumstances that this came off. And if I had to do this again, then I still feel nervous about it. And there's sort of different patterns of perhaps groups of people that are particularly vulnerable to imposter syndrome. So the sorts of people are kind of perfectionists. So people who feel like they have to get everything right. Often they can feel a bit like, well, if I hadn't have done all of that work, then this wouldn't have happened for me.
Is it tied in any way to anxiety? Is it sort of a cousin or a distant relative?
Yeah, it can be. I mean, what you can find is that when people feel like they haven't done the work, they can feel very, very anxious. So what they do is that they double down and they do all sorts of different things in order to make sure that they cover themselves. But yet they discount that work that they've done. And they put it through and put it down to just chance. They're unable to actually say it was the hard work that I did that enabled me to pull this off.
And this is specifically for our Kiwi listeners, but I'm sure our international listeners can also relate. Is this tied in any way to tall poppy syndrome? Is it sort of a side effect of that mentality as well?
Yeah, well, I guess within the Kiwi context, and probably in Australia too, there's this idea of not being too big for your own boots, right? You make sure that you don't stick your head above the crowd. You don't want to stand out. And that includes for your accomplishments, as well as perhaps other things that perhaps mark you out from the crowd for other reasons. So you just kind of want to blend into the background, take your achievements and keep them below the radar, which is really unfortunate because, you know, we should be able to celebrate our successes and be able to internalize them to enable our own development, but also for the whole economy, for our society and our community. We should be celebrating these achievements rather than just keeping them down.
Actually, it reminds me, I was having lunch once with Rosanna Raimondi, 2018 Pacific Senior Artist of the Year, and we both lived in London at the time. And she told me something very interesting, which is London teaches you as a New Zealander to have self-worth, to have an arrogance, a cockiness, to say, I matter. And then you come back to New Zealand and you have to learn to hold on to that and hide it. It's like, I matter. Do you matter? Oh, no, I don't matter that much, but I still matter. I quietly still matter. Talking about success, can I also ask about burnout? Because, again, this comes from my personal experiences of my biggest drops psychologically have often come after my biggest successes professionally. And I'm wondering, is there something in when you push yourself and push yourself to get across the line that you can be in danger of pushing too far or not knowing how to come back?
Yeah, there is. And burnout's quite a complex idea, but there's a few different things that we could talk about there. But I think one of the things that is relevant here is when you feel like you've hit a goal. There's something that you've been working really, really hard for. And I don't know about you, but sometimes you can feel quite deflated afterwards. It's like, well, and now what next? And so you can struggle sometimes to find a challenge that's going to be engaging for you, because partly you realize how much work you will have to do in order to kind of pull it off. But often it can go the other way. You'll be familiar with the idea, you know, if you support a team or if you're in a team, sometimes you may win a championship, right? And then the next year, they don't do so well.
Right.
And there's many reasons for that, but one of them is that actually they internalize this idea that it was just them rather than the work. So they fall into the trap of actually not doing the work and actually thinking it was their intrinsic ability that pulled it off. But actually it's both. It's your intrinsic ability and the hard work that you do. And so what you can find is that these people who have done all this hard work can disengage, partly because maybe they're burnt out from all the effort, but partly because they don't want to fail. Right? And they know that actually, unless I do the hard work, then there's a danger that I might fail. So I'm actually going to disengage.
I just want to give a shout out to all the New Zealand Warriors fans who are listening to this, who are going, oh, like just that beautiful moment of enlightenment I'm sure you've just had. Clinical psychologist Sarb Johal, thank you so much for, again, answering my questions here in the shower. It's been Eating Fried Chicken in the Shower. You can find us on iTunes or on Radio New Zealand podcast /fried chicken. Kia ora.
This podcast is made possible by the RNZ New Zealand On Air Innovation Fund.